First off, I just want to say that I love this design. A crystallized dragon with no lower body is such a fun and interesting idea, and I love the concept. Unfortunately, the same thing cannot be said for the fight itself because it's laughably boring. All you do is run away from Seif's crystal AoE attacks and stick to his, legs? For the easy win. The reason Seif is this high is because he had a number of attacks that actually gave me a hard time and punished me for being greedy, which led to some pretty embarrassing deaths I don't feel comfortable showing here. Thankfully though, with some patience and determination, I was able to slay this disloyal dragon. I hate this fight. Seriously, I don't know whose idea it was to design this boss because this is questionably the most frustrating boss in the early game. All this boss really does is fly away from you, spam you with magic, then chew on some grass, and do the same thing all over again. Now the trick is to hit the Moonlight Butterfly while he's chewing on this grass, and to be fair, the window to do so is quite extremely generous. And that's my main problem with this fight, it's just straight up boring, because if you're a melee player, it's a waiting game, and if you're range, it's a cakewalk. It's a shame too, man, because the music and the atmosphere are some of the best in the entire game, so it's really quite disappointing. Next up, we got the Keepers guarding the first Bell of Awakening. This has always been a boss that I severely struggle with, and that's for one good reason. I suck at gank fights. But thankfully this one is one of the fairest encounters in the entire game. What makes this fight so difficult is balancing both gargoyles at once. Each gargoyle has their own unique attacks, with one hitting you with ranged pyromancy and the other prioritizing melee. Stack this on top of the fact that you're fighting on a rooftop and can get bonked off at any time, and you have a good recipe for a great Dark Souls challenge. Topping off one of the worst areas in the entire game with one of the worst bosses in the entire series, and I'm serious too. There is absolutely nothing I enjoy about this fight. I hate the run back, I hate the design, I hate the shitty platforming. Oh, and did I mention the run back? Because it will take you a bare minimum of 3 minutes just to get back to the damn thing. And if it couldn't get any worse, you have to kill this boss as she holds one of the lore souls to open up the kiln to the first flame. You know it, I know it, the developers know it. This is without doubt the worst encounter in this entire series. Gravelord Nito is the very definition of an amazing concept but with awful execution, and for good reason, because this is questionably the most bullshit boss in the entire game, behind you know who. I'm serious too, not only is this run back god awful, but you'll start this fight off with full damage. Stack this on top of 50 skeletons that will always stalk you and you have a recipe for disaster. Thankfully, if you don't enter the second half of the arena, the bigger skeletons will just ignore you, but the truth is you'll spend way more time running away from this boss than you will actually fighting him. What a way to kick off one of the hardest DLCs in gaming history. The Sanctuary Guardian is a foe you'll encounter almost immediately when you start the DLC, and he sets a very intimidating first impression. I'm serious too, this has to be the most aggressive boss you've encountered so far. It feels more like a boss you'd find in Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne. And that's not a nod to the fight either, because this has to be one of my favourite fights in Dark Souls 1. The The Capra Demon has to be, without doubt, the most frustrating boss in the early game, and for good reason. You will be ambushed almost immediately after entering the arena by the Capra Demon and 2 dogs. And trust me, this fight will make you hate dogs because these ankle biters will be nipping at you all the way to the arena. And after dying 10 fucking times in a row, I brought my cousin in to teach these guys a lesson. Yeah, this fight is just a frustrating RNG nightmare where you feel like the developers are making a fight that's hard just for the sake of being hard. Coming up at number 6, we have the final boss of the game, and he is in one word, relentless. Seriously, this guy will spam you with almost no reprieve. Thankfully, he can be parried, which I did manage to pull off a couple of times, but I've never really been that good at parrying myself, so I had to fight him fair and square. Well, as fair as I could make it, because I played this fight like an absolute buffoon and just staggered the Spam Lord into oblivion. All jokes aside, this is an amazing boss and a great conclusion to this fantastic game. Words cannot describe the feelings of dread I had knowing this boss was lurking somewhere in the DLC. And when I finally arrived at the Colosseum and was greeted with this absolute force of nature, I knew I was in a world of hurt. Seriously, this might be the first fight in this series that genuinely gave me trouble. And that's because Artorias hits like a truck and has a variety of combos that can one-shot you if you're not careful. The reason Artorias is lower than the next 4 entries is because his health pool is generously low and feels completely fair in all the right ways. Truly one of the greatest fights in the series. There's only one thing that comes to mind when thinking about this boss, and it's the chunky health bar. I'm not kidding, this fight took me 12 minutes to beat using all 20 Estus flasks and 6 humanities to kill him. Calamite has a very wide arsenal of attacks that often transition between one another seamlessly. This makes attacking him extremely risky and often scary because you never know when he's gonna pull a new move out of thin air and kill you. Thankfully, this is all reasonably balanced with fair telegraphs and patterns indicating what Calamite is gonna do next. But even knowing that, there's still no doubt in my mind that this is one of the most challenging fights in the entire game. Fun fact, this was the boss that made me quit halfway through when I attempted it nearly 7 years ago now. The design of the fight is simple. Ornstein is a smaller dexterity-like aggressor, and Smaug is a bulky knight who will slowly stalk you throughout the arena. Managing both of these warriors at once was such a challenging endeavour that I unfortunately pussied out and summoned my Canadian friend Dan to assist me take down the duo. And what's icing on the cake is once you kill one of them, the other will be souped up, creating an absolutely terrifying second phase. There's a reason these two are remembered so much, because it's iconic, it's fair, extremely satisfying to overcome, and marks the halfway point separating what's quite possibly the most jarring second half in a video game. Yes, you read that right. This boss killed me 62 fucking times, and goddamn do I remember each and every one of those deaths. And that's for good reason. Manus is an absolute powerhouse that does the most damage out of any other boss in the game, has a series of brutal combos and attack patterns that make you question if you loaded up Dark Souls 3. And combine that with some very punishing dark spells and you have an absolute recipe for challenge. However, I really do believe that this is all completely fair because this boss is the very definition of an endurance fight. You have to be absolutely focused for 11 minutes straight if you want even a chance of beating this guy. But just like any of these games, with every death is a new lesson learned, and if you made it this far, I know you have what it takes to defeat the Father of the Abyss. Thank you for watching these first 2 ranking videos. This is the beginning of my YouTube channel, and this is going to be a very extensive channel for all Dark Souls content and for all video game content. I want to go through as many different games as I can. So if that sounds interesting to you guys, maybe stick around, subscribe, and see what's next in store. I do want to go through Demon Souls. That's the next game on my radar, considering I just beat the game, and the game's... I don't want to swear on this channel, but the game is amazing, dude, and I cannot wait to talk about the bosses. That video should be up within, I'm going to say 4 to 6 days, so if you can be a bit patient, I'd greatly appreciate it. And I hope you have a fantastic day. Thanks for sticking through the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.